this video, we're going to show you how to edit a student. Again, we click on Manage Students and select the student. This time, we click on Edit at the bottom of the screen. Now we can see Jason's details. We're going to go through these settings and give you some more information on each one. Don't forget that there's an About button which will remind you if necessary. Personal details are quite straightforward, and obviously you're not likely to need to change anything here. The next section is Account Information. You'll see that this student is currently active. It is possible to deactivate a student and allocate their license to a different student, and it's also possible to delete a student completely. Now, the advantage of deactivating a student rather than deleting them is that their records are still available and the student can be reactivated in the future. In this section, you can also change the student's password. Now, this here is where you can reset tests. We'll be talking in more detail about this in future videos, but summary information is available in the About section. There are only a couple of points which are worth mentioning here. When the spelling test is done for the first time, it will give you a spelling age and also place the learner on the right level of the course. Now, this test can be done as a retest and it will give you a new spelling age, but will not automatically adjust the course position. Please be aware that this is a standardized test, so it should, strictly speaking, only be done once every year. Once every 6 months is acceptable, but it shouldn't be done more often than that. This here is the Learning Settings section. You can see the learner's course position here and can click to adjust it. Now, this is seldom necessary though, because with forced progression on, your learner has to do every activity successfully anyway, and the placement test will have put them at the appropriate level when they first started. The accent choice gives you 3 options. Selecting an accent here will override the school setting for this student. The next item shows you that forced progression is on for this student. Now remember, this is the feature which locks the student into the right part of the course. It's generally a big advantage for teachers, and it ensures that students do every activity and in the right order. When forced progression is on, you'll see that there is a selector which enables you to specify which medal to demand. The default setting is that it is silver. To get a silver medal, the student can make a maximum of 2 errors. Now, this means that if your learner has achieved a silver medal, you know that they have successfully completed that activity. And you can change this to gold as well, which means no errors, but every student is likely to make a careless error once in a while, so this isn't necessarily a good idea. We've found that medals are an excellent motivator for students, particularly those who have not experienced success before. So we're therefore quite generous when giving a bronze medal. For that reason, we'd recommend sticking with silver as the requirement for most of your students. However, if you start working with a student with significant learning needs or a real lack of confidence, you could change this to bronze. If you do opt to do this, we'd recommend going back to previous units together and redoing all of the activities where they only achieved a bronze, so you can see what was causing the difficulty. It's excellent revision for students to go back and try to upgrade their medals. Now, forced progression means that they can't redo an activity with a gold medal, but a bronze or silver can be repeated to upgrade the medal, which is obviously good reinforcement. It's ideal if a student goes back to previous units every now and then and does previous lists to upgrade their medals. The sentence builder is an activity which requires the student to arrange words to make the sentence. For younger learners, it would be too much to expect them to rearrange a sentence for every word in the list, so the default setting means that students only do a sentence for 5 words from that list. However, if you're working with more advanced students or English language learners, you can untick this box to include a sentence for every word in the list. There's an upbeat ping sound when a student has chosen a correct option. Now, if this annoys the student or you can always turn it off here. The View Restricted Content option allows you to create mature or possibly sensitive content and control which students can see it. For example, some educators have wanted to create their own materials for, say, sex education, but didn't want younger students to come across their lists. When you create your own lists or enter your own words, you have the option of marking them as restricted. For the students that you'd like to be able to use the restricted content, click Enabled and they'll be able to see and use it. Now we get to features. The first is for the Games section. Now you may have noticed that there's a section on StepsWeb for games. Every game is designed as a teaching activity and is research-based. However, they're obviously also to provide a bit of variety and fun. Because their main purpose is educational, we'd recommend leaving students with access to this section. However, if you have a student who continually goes into games when they're supposed to be working on the course, you can always turn this off. The same goes for the Supporting Activities section. The last feature is Create Custom Words. Now a student can create a personal list on StepsWeb. The normal setting is that they can also create new words which weren't previously in the program. There is a rude words filter on StepsWeb, but that doesn't stop a learner creating an acceptable word, but adding a rude recording. Now, luckily this isn't normally an issue. However, for your more ingenious students who like to get around restrictions wherever possible, you can always switch this off to stop them entering their own words. Now, they can still create their own lists, but only using words which are already on the program. You may have noticed that the first option is labelled Default. Now this refers to the account-wide setting that usually applies to most students. Now these defaults can be changed under School Settings on the front page. Now the value in the brackets is what the default is currently set to. So that's the Edit Students function. Don't forget, of course, to click Save if you've made any changes. While we're on this page, we'll show you some other features you need to be aware of. At the top, there's a button marked Printables. Now what this enables you to do is print out a list of all your students with usernames and passwords. You can also print these out as separate slips, which can be cut up and distributed to students so that they know their login details. The last printable is a parent handout, which explains that their child has a StepsWeb login and how to access it from home. Now these will print out for all of your students, and individual username and login details will be inserted automatically for each one. At the bottom of this page, you can add a student, and just under that button, you'll see a box which tells you how many licenses your account has in total and how many of those are currently in use. If you have the store role enabled on your educator login, you can click on this to add more licenses at any point. And when licenses are added during the main license period, you are only charged pro rata for the remaining time on the main license. You can see here that there is a calculator which tells you the exact amount.